That motivation advice you've been following, it's not just ineffective, it's literally rewiring your brain for failure. Think about it. How many times have you pumped yourself up with motivational videos, felt that temporary surge of inspiration, only to crash harder than before? That's not a personal failure, it's a systemic one. Here's the neurological reality. Motivation isn't something you find or force. It's something you engineer through strategic brain chemistry manipulation. When you try to push harder, you're activating your sympathetic nervous system, flooding your body with cortisol and adrenaline. This creates a biological debt your brain must repay, leading to even deeper motivation crashes. The game changer? Understanding the intrinsic-extrinsic motivation spectrum. Extrinsic motivation creates a neurological house of cards. Intrinsic motivation builds sustainable neural pathways that strengthen over time. Today, I'm showing you 3 revolutionary methods to engineer sustained internal drive, not through hacks, but through fundamental rewiring of your motivational circuitry. The question isn't whether you can become more motivated, it's, are you ready to stop chasing motivation and start creating the conditions where it emerges naturally? Smash subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's begin. The Autonomy Activation Protocol. Chasing motivation is like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. The harder you grasp, the faster it disappears. This isn't just frustrating, it's actively sabotaging your brain's natural motivational systems. Here's the mind-blowing truth that transformed how I approach motivation. Your brain is already perfectly designed to generate unlimited motivation. The problem? You've been actively shutting down these natural systems without even realizing it. Let me introduce you to what psychologists call the motivation paradox, the counterintuitive reality that directly pursuing motivation actually makes it more elusive. Every time you search for that motivational spark externally, you're literally training your brain to depend on outside sources for drive. This creates a neurological dependency cycle that weakens your intrinsic motivation muscles. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how a child doesn't need motivation to play? They don't watch inspirational videos before building with Legos. They don't need external rewards to explore something fascinating. That's because their intrinsic motivation systems haven't been hijacked yet. The key breakthrough here is understanding the autonomy competence relatedness triangle, the 3 psychological nutrients your brain requires to generate motivation organically. When these 3 elements align, motivation isn't something you hunt for. It's something that emerges automatically. Autonomy is your brain's need for self-determination, the sense that you're choosing your actions rather than being controlled. Neuroscience research shows that when you experience genuine choice, your prefrontal cortex activates differently than when you feel forced, even if you're doing the exact same activity. This is why assigned reading feels like torture, while reading the same book by choice feels energizing. Here's where it gets fascinating. fMRI studies reveal that self-determined activities trigger your brain's intrinsic reward system, releasing dopamine not just during the activity but in anticipation of it. This creates a self-sustaining motivation loop that doesn't require external pushes or rewards. The autonomy activation protocol I'm about to share will systematically re-engineer this self-determination pathway through what I call choice architecture. Instead of trying to force motivation, which automatically destroys autonomy, you'll create strategic choice environments that trigger your brain's innate drive mechanisms. Step 1. Implement the 70-30 autonomy framework in every project. This means structuring your goals so that 70% of the what and why is fixed, but 30% of the how remains your choice. This small but critical shift creates enough structure to maintain direction while providing enough autonomy to activate your brain's intrinsic motivation circuits. For example, instead of saying, "I must exercise for 30 minutes daily," zero autonomy, reframe it as, "I'm committed to 30 minutes of movement daily, and I choose which activity based on what I feel my body needs today." Structured autonomy. This isn't semantics, it's strategic neuroscience. When you implement this protocol, you're literally rewiring the neural pathways that determine whether your brain perceives an activity as a threat to be avoided or an opportunity to be embraced. The second part of the autonomy activation protocol addresses the extrinsic reward dependency cycle that's been decimating your motivation. Here's the brutal truth. Every external reward you use to motivate yourself, from Netflix binges after completing tasks to social media validation of your progress, is systematically destroying your brain's ability to generate intrinsic drive. Studies show that introducing external rewards for activities that were previously intrinsically motivating actually reduces long-term engagement and satisfaction. This phenomenon, called the over-justification effect, explains why turning your passion into a job often kills your love for it. The protocol to break this cycle involves strategic reward recalibration, shifting from outcome-based rewards to process-based engagement. Instead of rewarding yourself for completing a task, you'll learn to engineer the task itself to be inherently satisfying through autonomy optimization. This isn't about making everything fun, it's about reconnecting with your brain's natural drive systems rather than bypassing them with artificial motivators that ultimately leave you emptier than before. The transformation I've seen in clients who implement this protocol is nothing short of remarkable. One executive who struggled with motivation issues for decades discovered he didn't have a motivation problem at all. He had an autonomy deficit. Within 3 weeks of implementing the 70-30 framework, his productivity increased by 63%, not because he was pushing harder, but because he had stopped fighting against his brain's natural motivational wiring. Are you starting to see how fundamentally different this approach is from conventional motivation advice? We're not adding more pressure or temporary inspiration. We're removing the obstacles that have been blocking your brain's inherent drive systems all along. And this is just the first method. The second revolutionary approach addresses how mastery creates a self-perpetuating motivation engine that virtually eliminates the need for willpower altogether. The mastery momentum system. Let's get real about motivation for a second. What if everything you've been taught about mastering your mind is completely backward? The breakthrough that transformed my approach to motivation forever wasn't found in a motivational quote or morning routine. It was hidden in the neurological mechanics of flow states. This discovery will completely revolutionize how you generate drive within. Most people treat motivation like fuel they need to find and consume. But what if motivation is actually the byproduct of something else entirely? What if it's the result, not the cause, of meaningful engagement? This is where the mastery momentum system enters the game and changes everything. When researchers study people in flow states, those periods of complete immersion where time seems to disappear, they discover something fascinating. Intrinsic motivation isn't something you create before you start. It's something that emerges naturally during optimal challenge. Here's the mind-blowing reality. Your brain is literally designed to become addicted to skill development when the conditions are right. The neurochemical cocktail released during the mastery process, dopamine, endorphins, anandamide, and norepinephrine, creates a natural high that external rewards can never match. The first component of the mastery momentum system is strategic challenge calibration. Most people kill their motivation by setting challenges that are either too easy, boring, or too difficult, overwhelming. The sweet spot for triggering intrinsic motivation lies precisely at the edge of your current abilities, what psychologists call optimal challenge. Here's the implementation protocol. For any skill you want to develop, structure your practice sessions to target a 70 to 85% success rate. This specific range triggers your brain's natural reward systems without activating avoidance circuitry. Below 70% success, your brain registers the activity as threatening and generates resistance. Above 85%, it doesn't release enough reward chemicals to create intrinsic drive. This isn't theory, it's neurological engineering. One of my clients, a struggling musician who had lost all passion for practice, implemented this protocol and experienced a complete motivation renaissance. By structuring his sessions for optimal challenge, his brain began producing motivation automatically rather than requiring external pressure. The second breakthrough component is what I call deliberate feedback loops. Your brain's mastery circuits require clear, immediate feedback to generate motivation. Without this feedback, the neurochemical reward system doesn't activate properly. Most people practice in ways that create massive gaps between action and feedback, killing their intrinsic motivation. The solution? Engineered feedback mechanisms that create tight cause-effect connections your brain can process. Implement the micro-feedback framework by breaking skills into their smallest components and creating measurement systems that provide instant performance data. This isn't about external validation, it's about creating the precise information your brain needs to ignite its natural drive mechanisms. For example, instead of practicing an entire presentation, which provides delayed, vague feedback, break it into 30-second segments with specific metrics for each. This creates the continuous feedback loop your brain craves, generating motivation automatically through the mastery process. Now let's address the most transformative element of the mastery. Momentum system curiosity cultivation. Your brain produces motivation effortlessly when in a state of curious exploration. Yet most people inadvertently suppress this natural drive by focusing exclusively on outcomes rather than questions. The neurochemistry here is fascinating. Curiosity triggers dopamine release in anticipation of discovering something new, creating a motivation reward loop that sustains itself. The moment you shift from outcome orientation to curiosity orientation, your brain switches from resistance mode to exploration mode. Here's the implementation protocol. Before beginning any task, take 60 seconds to generate 3 specific questions about the process. These questions activate your brain's seeking circuits, converting what might have been a dreaded task into an exploration opportunity. This isn't positive thinking, it's strategic neural activation. One executive implemented this protocol before, boring financial reviews, and experienced such a dramatic shift in engagement that his team thought he had been replaced by an imposter. The final component addresses perhaps the most overlooked aspect of sustained motivation: values alignment. When your actions connect directly to your core values, your brain generates motivation without requiring additional input. Most motivation problems stem from value-action misalignment. You're trying to force yourself to do things that don't connect to what truly matters to you, creating immense neural resistance. The values alignment protocol solves this by creating explicit bridges between your daily actions and your deepest values. This doesn't mean only doing what feels good, it means finding the authentic connection between necessary tasks and your core principles. For example, a parent struggling with motivation for a tedious career certification reconnected the process to their value of providing security for their family. This wasn't just reframing, it was neurological reprogramming that eliminated the need for willpower entirely. Imagine the freedom of having your brain automatically generate the drive you need instead of constantly having to pump yourself up through external means. That's the power of the mastery momentum system, not more motivation techniques, but a fundamental rewiring of how your brain produces drive. Are you starting to see how revolutionary this approach is? We're not trying to find more motivation. We're transforming how your brain generates it in the first place. And we're just getting to the most powerful method that will turn these insights into a practical daily system: the purpose alignment method. Ever notice how some people seem to have an almost supernatural ability to stay driven while everyone else burns out? It's not willpower. It's not discipline. It's a completely different operating system, and I'm about to hand you the source code. The ultimate motivation secret isn't finding more drive, it's making motivation completely irrelevant by aligning with your deepest purpose. This isn't some fluffy concept, it's neurological programming that creates automatic execution. Let's cut straight to the implementation system that turns everything we've discussed into daily reality. Because transformation without application is just entertainment, and I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to rewire your motivation circuitry from the ground up. The first component is the Progressive Challenge Protocol, the most powerful momentum-building system I've ever discovered. Most people try to make massive motivation jumps and crash hard. This protocol creates an unstoppable motivation cascade through strategic challenge sequencing. Here's how it works. Map out any goal as a series of micro-challenge steps where each success creates momentum for the next. The neurochemical magic happens when you structure these challenges in precise 15 to 20% increments above your previous achievement. This specific percentage is crucial. It's large enough to trigger your brain's reward systems, but small enough to avoid activating threat responses. Each successfully completed challenge creates a dopamine surge that primes your neural pathways for the next level. One of my clients used this protocol to transform from someone who couldn't maintain a 5-minute daily meditation practice to completing a 10-day silent retreat, not through grueling discipline, but through strategic neural pathway development that made each step feel natural and internally driven. The second game-changing implementation tool addresses the invisible motivation killers in your environment. Your physical space isn't neutral, it's either actively supporting your motivation or systematically destroying it. Every object in your environment triggers specific neural pathways. That notification-filled phone sitting next to you? It's literally rewiring your attention circuits even when you're not looking at it. The cluttered desk? It's creating cognitive load that's draining your prefrontal cortex, the exact brain region responsible for sustained motivation. The environmental recalibration protocol is a systematic approach to engineering your physical space for maximum motivational support. This isn't about creating a perfect Instagram-worthy workspace, it's about strategic neurological optimization. The implementation has 3 phases. Motivation trigger mapping, identifying which environmental elements activate or deactivate your drive mechanisms. Decision point optimization, restructuring your environment to minimize resistance at critical choice moments. Progressive cue embedding, strategically placing visual triggers that activate your purpose pathways automatically. One executive implemented just the first phase of this protocol and increased his productive output by 40% within a week, not by working harder, but by eliminating the environmental elements that were silently sabotaging his brain's motivation systems. But here's where we reach the absolute pinnacle of intrinsic motivation: identity-based drive architecture. This revolutionary framework completely eliminates the need for traditional motivation by rewiring how you conceptualize actions at a neurological level. Most people approach motivation from an outcome perspective. I need to do this to get that. This creates immediate resistance because it frames the action as separate from who you are. Identity-based motivation flips this completely. This is who I am, so these actions are natural expressions of my identity. This isn't semantic wordplay, it's fundamental neural reconfiguration. When you operate from identity rather than obligation, your brain processes tasks through entirely different neural pathways that don't require willpower or external pressure. The implementation protocol involves creating identity statements that connect directly to your core values, then systematically reinforcing these identities through micro-actions that your brain registers as evidence. For example, instead of "I need to work out today," obligation that requires motivation, it becomes "I'm an athlete and athletes train daily," identity expression that happens automatically. The neurological difference is profound. One creates resistance, the other creates alignment. The final implementation system, and perhaps the most immediately transformative, is the micro-win architecture. This framework exploits a fundamental truth about your brain's reward circuitry. Frequency of success matters more than magnitude. Most motivation strategies fail because they focus on distant, large accomplishments that provide too little neurological reinforcement. The micro-win system restructures any goal into a series of minimum viable completions that your brain registers as meaningful successes. The implementation protocol has you create daily win thresholds so low they're almost impossible to miss, then gradually elevating these thresholds as your success circuitry strengthens. Each micro-win triggers a small dopamine release, creating a motivation cascade effect that builds throughout the day. This isn't just another productivity hack, it's a complete neural rewiring that transforms how your brain processes challenges at the most fundamental level. When properly implemented, these systems don't just increase your motivation temporarily, they permanently alter how your brain generates drive in the first place. Are you beginning to see the revolutionary potential? Here, we're not talking about pushing harder or finding more inspiration. We're talking about fundamentally altering the neural mechanisms that determine whether motivation is even necessary in the first place. The question isn't whether these systems work, the neuroscience is irrefutable. The question is whether you're ready to abandon outdated motivation models and implement the neural architecture that makes motivation struggles obsolete. Igniting your internal fire. Let's cut through the noise. Everything we've covered isn't just another motivational pep talk, it's a complete neural revolution that transforms how your brain generates drive from the inside out. The old motivation model is dead. Pushing yourself through willpower isn't just ineffective, it's actively sabotaging your brain's natural drive mechanisms. We've uncovered the neural architecture of sustainable motivation, the autonomy activation protocol that triggers your self-determination pathways. The mastery momentum system that turns skill development into a motivation engine. The purpose alignment method that makes motivation irrelevant through identity-based drive. This isn't theory, it's applied neuroscience that rewires how your brain processes challenges. Take the 7-day neural rewiring challenge. Implement just one protocol from each system. Not because you should, but because you're ready to experience what genuine intrinsic motivation feels like. Smash that like button right now to create your first micro-win. Subscribe and turn on notifications to join our community of neural optimizers. Your brain is rewiring itself with every decision. The battle for your internal fire starts now, not tomorrow. Now, I'll see you in the next one.